Hello everyone, welcome to English Literature Pathshala. I have been making videos for you to facilitate your problems, especially in this period of lockdown when you are not able to attend your classes. In the first phase, actually, I tried to cover the various topics which are prescribed in your course, and then some figures of speech I explained in my various video lectures. Now, some students rang me up and requested that they are preparing for NET examination also. So I thought that those aspects, those topics which are not prescribed in their course, but they are asked in different competitive examinations. So let me also explain those topics. So today I will explain one of the important topics of literary criticism and theory, and that is new criticism. Now, I usually give examples from my class, and that is the experience through which I try to explain my points. So I was supposed to teach a paper of literary criticism, and in that paper there was a portion where unseen passage was there. So that was given by me to the students. One piece of poetry, one piece of poem was given to the students for analysis. So one student, out of curiosity, asked us, how can I evaluate this extract, because I do not know the name of the poem. But it's a part of practical criticism. Then at that particular time, because he was a UG student, so could not understand properly what this literary criticism theory is. But I told him that you have to analyze this on the basis of the poem. Now, what happens that when you are given a piece of poem for critical assessment, you always try to look into the background of the poem, background of the author. Say, for example, if I ask you to analyze one poem by Wordsworth, so what will you say? You will say, for example, Lucy poem. One of the Lucy poems is given to you, and you are asked to evaluate it. So what you will do is that you will try to find out the biographical detail of William Wordsworth, the French Revolution, socio-economic background of the time, and then you will come to the poem. That is, for the analysis of a poem, the biographical details, historical details, socio-economic details of the author are very much required. What happens in new criticism? Now, new criticism is all about the text. New criticism is based on the close reading of the text. There is no role of the biographical details or the historical details of the author. Now, as I told you that before this was actually this came into practice in the first half of the 20th century, 1930s or so. But what used to happen, prior to the 1920s, we used to critics used to focus on the biographical details and the historical details of the author. Then, in 1929, I.A. Richards published his book, Practical Criticism. Now, this book, Practical Criticism, focused on the text without knowing the background of the author. So this basically criticism is a part of the formalist movement. One more example I would like to give, that when I was teaching T.S. Eliot at the PG level, and I was explaining the essay tradition and the individual talent. Now, in the second part of tradition and the individual talent, there was a line: honest criticism and sensitive appreciation should be directed not upon the poet but upon the poetry. And then he later on says that Wordsworth's formula is inexact. Poetry is not a turning loose of emotion; it is an escape from emotion. Now, T.S. Eliot is supposed to be the exponent of this kind of criticism, new criticism, which, as I just told you, is a formalist movement in literary theory. Now, this kind of movement emphasized, as I told you, on the close reading, particularly of poetry, and it shows that text is self-contained, self-referential, and text is an entity in itself. Now, this movement of new criticism derived its name from John Crowe Ransom's book entitled The New Criticism. Though this movement came into practice a bit earlier, but the name actually became popular after the publication of the book The New Criticism by John Crowe Ransom in the year 1941. Now, you see, as I just told you that new criticism, like formalism, it tends to consider text as autonomous and closed meaning, and it focuses on the point that it is text that matters. I told you that text is an entity in itself. It's a text that ultimately matters. The reader are not supposed to see the outside sources such as author's biography, historical details, socio-economic background and all that to interpret a work. He has to focus on the text. Now, you see, what will a reader do? A reader or a critic should focus on the text, thinking the text is an entity in itself, and he has to bring out the important devices of the text, like metaphor, irony, tension, paradox, ambiguity and all that. So the meaning is the new critics emphasized the close reading of the text, and a new critic instructs that one has to pay close attention to the interactions between form and meaning. And a new critic always says that the meaning of a text is intrinsic and should not be confused with author's intention or work's affective dimensions, like its impressionistic effect upon the reader. They always said that meaning exists on the page. Now, I have just told you the two important points that a reader or a critic should not be confused with author's intentions or its affective dimensions. So I'll tell you two important terms later on. But these critics said that the meaning always exists on the page. Now, as I told you, the important seminal work is I.A. Richards' Practical Criticism, which was published in 1929. And then there is important work by William Empson, and that is called 7 Types of Ambiguity. This was actually the term, the book actually, which was asked many times in net examination also. To the example of T.S. Eliot, I have already given that he was the major exponent of this kind of movement, and we find the traces of new criticism in his 2 essays. One is Tradition and the Individual Talent, and other is Hamlet and His Problems, where he discussed the concept of objective correlative. Now, some important new critics are Ellen Tate, R.P. Warren, John Crowe Ransom, I have already given you the example of that, Cleanth Brooks, William Empson, and F.R. Lewis. Now, as I told you that a reader should not be confused with the intention of the author or the affective dimensions. So the two critics, W.K. Wimsatt Jr. and Munro C. Beardsley, they wrote a critical book called The Verbal Icon. In that book, The Verbal Icon, they talked about 2 kinds of fallacies. One is the intentional fallacy and the other is affective fallacy. Now, these two terms are very significant and they were asked many times in the competitive examinations. The intentional fallacy and the effective fallacy. Now, these are the two terms which are introduced by W.K. Wimsatt and Munro C. Beardsley in The Verbal Icon, which was published in 1954. Now, what is this intentional fallacy? I have already, given you some hint about that. The intentional fallacy is when one confuses the meaning of a work with the author's intention, expressed in letters, diaries, interviews, for example, to judge a work of art. When you judge a work of art by the intention of the author in writing that, you are committing an error, a fallacy, which is called intentional fallacy. You are judging a work by the intention of the author. Then what was the intention of the author in writing that particular text? Similarly, effective fallacy claims that we should not waste time thinking about the effect a text may have on the reader, because then we are actually polluting the text with our own personal biases. What is that? The meaning is, the effective fallacy is basically the supposed fallacy of judging or evaluating a text on the basis of the emotional effects on a reader. So, intentional fallacy, when we commit a fallacy, an error of judging a work or evaluating a work by the intention of the author. Then what was the intention of the author in writing a particular text? Similarly, the effective fallacy is the supposed error of judging or evaluating a text on the basis of its emotional effects on the reader. Now, there is another term which was used by Cleanth Brooks, and that is called the heresy of paraphrase. The heresy of paraphrase. Now, this term, the heresy of the paraphrase, actually this is the title of a chapter in the book The Well-Wrought Urn, which is a work by Cleanth Brooks. Now, this was again a question in UGC NET examination, that what is the source of the book The Well-Wrought Urn. As I have just told you, that this term heresy of paraphrase was used by Cleanth Brooks in his book The Well-Wrought Urn. And what is the source of the Well-Wrought Urn? Actually, the term Well-Wrought Urn was borrowed by Cleanth Brooks from a stanza from one poem which was written by John Donne. John Donne wrote a poem, The Canonization. In the poem, The Canonization, he used this phrase, of well-wrought urn. So the source of that title of the book is The Well-Wrought Urn. Now, Cleanth Brooks, in this essay, The Well-Wrought Urn, he, as I have told you, uses this term, heresy of paraphrase. Now, what is this heresy of paraphrase? He says that any reductionist, attempt to transform the poetic meaning to a prose statement. Now, when you meaning is, he says that we are doing injustice to a poem when we are making an attempt to transform the poetic meaning to the prose one. That is when we try to paraphrase it. Now, it's he says it's one's failure to recognize the poem as a poem when you start paraphrasing it. In a poem, he says, form and content are inseparable. And that is why a poem cannot be reduced to prose. He says, how can you, condense a novel or a poem in 2-3 minutes, summary. So when you try to summarize a particular text, it loses its beauty. So again, you are committing a kind of error, because, so what is basically new criticism? New criticism was basically a movement of, 20th century. It came around 1920s. The term became popular after, the publication of the book by John Crowe Ransom, and the basic meaning of new criticism is a close reading of a text, and it establishes a point that text is an entity in itself. A reader is required to focus or evaluate the text on its internal beauty, and he should try to find out the aesthetic beauty of the text. If we are not doing that, we are committing many errors. Like for example, two kinds of fallacies the critics are talking about: intentional fallacy and effective fallacy, and then we have heresy of paraphrase. Thank you very much.